1998 again. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Shout out to everybody that was in early. We have a pretty good amount of people in here. When I talk to producers day in and day out about beat selling strategies, beat licensing, beat marketing, I feel like the goal kind of shifts a bit, and the people that we're depending on and making the beats for 8 out of 10 times get lost, and they get excluded from the conversation. So today I want to include those people in the conversation so we can have a bit more dialogue and a bit more understanding and gain insight from one another. So I brought in two recording artists that I've known about for a couple years, and I'm grateful to have them. We have Jaelynn and we have Lucien Parker. How are the two of you feeling today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Great. How are you, Lucien? I know you
I'm also
abandoned
doing
this.
pretty well.
You abandoned us here in Madison. Um,
Can you hear me actually? Can you hear me through the mic?
yeah. Let me
Okay, cool.
ask the chat. Does anyone need to turn their volume up or turn their volume down? I know we have
Yeah,
some
can you
some.
hear me okay? Because I don't have a mic. I'm just. Is it...
Just scream louder. They say that they hear you.
Okay, good, good.
Um, okay. Well, Cloud9 Music says everyone sounds really good. So
Okay,
that's
perfect.
Yay.
way better
Success.
Beautiful, beautiful,
than normal.
beautiful.
Okay, we already have some Jaelynn fans in the chat. Hold on, let me
Aw.
open this door so my cat doesn't intrude the entire time that I'm online.
My cats are in here too, walking around, just so you know. They probably will.
Uh,
Her mic is good. You can hear my cat from
all the
a
way in the
block
back of the
away.
room. Yeah.
Further than that. All right, so I don't want to wait until the end to do this. Starting with Lucien and then Jaelynn, how do people find you? How do they follow you? How do they hear your music? I want
Mm.
people to be able to bookmark this now as they listen to the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I think social media, like mostly maybe mainly for me, like Instagram. I think we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years in trying to figure out how to kind of like get people that are on your DSP streaming your music to become followers on your social media platforms, and then vice versa, trying to get people who are following you on social media to go to your DSPs and actually stream your content. So we've been doing a lot of work of trying to like kind of um put those things together and couple those pieces together with your social media platform on your DSPs and your streaming sites, as well as your social media. So we've been doing everything that we can, like visually, to do that. I think a lot of my streaming lately has come from cool things too, like sync licensing, like sync placements and TV film placements. So I've had a lot of people jump over to my YouTube from Cloak and Dagger, like watching like a Cloak and Dagger show, and popping over and be like, "Hey, I heard your song on this show. Where can we find this song?" And then I've just been, done my due diligence of like connecting with those people on social media, following up, and things like that. But yeah, mostly my following comes from socials, and then I think my cold following really was built from just like local and regional touring. So
Oh, you
Nice.
jumped right into the complexity of that question. So on a basic level, what's the Instagram? What's the Spotify? How do people hear your music now?
yeah. So people mostly Spotify. Mostly Spotify or Apple Music for me, and then as well as like making a big push for YouTube. So like the main things that I think any curator in 2020 is learning about is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. And like those are or mostly those are like the big four, the big three, or however you want to couple them together. I think that those are the most important. So people usually they'll see like a social media ad we're running, or word of mouth. Like word of mouth right now, people just sending each other messages, sharing links with each other, SMSing each other. I think that that's a really great way, and it's been a really awesome way for us to like build that cold following, is getting other people to share stuff on social media. So stories, ads, running social media ads, curating ads towards your actual analytics, and things like that.
So on Spotify, you're Lucien Parker. On Instagram and Twitter, what are your usernames?
Also some form of Lucien Parker. So right, like Twitter, Lucien Parker wasn't just by itself wasn't available, so I just added an underscore in between. But I do have, one thing that we learned maybe a couple years ago was to make sure that all of your social medias have like your artist name or your stage name as the main name for every account, and then also using like similar photos so that people, when they're googling you or looking you up, They see similar photos for all of your accounts. So they know, oh, yeah, that's you. I can go to that page and I know that this is that person's official page, especially when you're not verified or you don't have like a huge following. Then people know that that's your like authentic original page.
Yeah, good advice for everybody, including producers. Jaelynn, how do people follow you? How do people check out your music?
A lot of my following would be Twitter for me. I love Twitter. I can interact with people on there and then share links and then, when they retweet and stuff like that. Also Spotify. I'm Jaelynn on Spotify, Jaelynn_415 on Instagram. I actually just joined Instagram though, so I'm new at it. I don't have a whole lot of content on there, but I'm working on it. But usually mostly Spotify for me. I kind of neglect the other platforms like Deezer, Tidal. I don't really push them or promote them as much as I should. Another thing I'm working on, but mainly like Apple or Spotify for me.
Got it. So you're both rappers who take your careers pretty seriously. What are some of the most recent career strides you've been proud of? I'll ask Jaelynn first and then Lucien second.
Career strides. Right now, honestly, there's not like a whole lot of, I'm just kind of at a plateau. I don't have anything going on right now other than just creating. I'm trying to make as much music as I can. But I'm kind of slow in the process. Like I see people who can put out a track a week, a track a day. I'm not the best at that. I kind of take a little bit longer for my process. So for me right now, it's just kind of building up my track list, having things ready to put out, just trying to be consistent with that. But as far as career strides, it's literally just that, just working on my brand, trying to make content, get stuff like that squared away. So that's about it right now for me. And this is awesome. I'm doing this.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, that's true. No, this is when DJ Payne won interviews,
is awesome.
your life changes within 24 hours.
See, that's what I'm hoping
That's
for.
the truth.
How about you, Lucien?
Just piggybacking off of Jaelynn, I think part of that stride has been with everything going on, right? Artists are forced to adjust right now. I think a lot more thoroughly than they were over the last couple of years, just because of everything going to virtual and like shows going digital and like live performance going digital to kind of just combat this COVID-19 pandemic. But I think one of those strides too has just been, like Jaelynn said, is figuring out what your process is and being comfortable in that process, right? Not everybody can put out 8 albums a year. We're not all Future, like we can all put out 30-track albums all the time, but making sure that your quality of work is something that you're proud of and that your process is something that you're proud of that works for you. So if you can fit in 2 EPs a year and a couple singles and a video, and that is working for your following, I think it's all about that, right? Is part of the dichotomy is being there for your fans, right? Just as much as you need them to be there for you. So I think figuring out like what your core following needs and what level of content consumption they need for your art. Like for me personally, I've realized that posting on my story a lot doesn't actually do much for me. But posting authentic content that people can comment, share on, and share on my news feeds is something that's more engaging for my core following specifically. Some people do a really good job on story, and that's awesome. But for me, it's more of that personal response. So texting my fans or DMing my fans, emailing my fans, things like that. They want a little bit more of a relationship with me than just watching me through my story. So I think one of those strides is that for me. And then another thing that has been really helpful for me the last couple of years is figuring out, okay, when there are dead periods like this, or quote unquote dead periods, what can artists do to still be full-time artists? So something that I've been heavy in for the last couple of years is that sync licensing that I mentioned earlier, and just figuring out other ways to take the content that I've lab ratted, right, and take the content that I record all day, every day, and figure out, okay, how can I monetize this content if I'm not releasing it? So TV, film, music, and ad music, or sending your music to influencers, right? Like that's a huge market right now where people are starting small businesses, is like ex-football players who are starting lifestyle fitness companies. They need music for their social media ads. So I've been doing whatever I can to utilize those platforms to kind of push things out. So recently, a couple of those things that worked for me was I had a placement maybe like a week ago in Tyler Perry's "Bruh" on BET, and then right before that, I sent out. I have 2 homies that they did the video for this new incubation company called Chameleon BX, and Chameleon BX is an MBA incubator program that takes like high school athletes and prepares them for the NBA. So it's usually high school athletes that aren't going the college route, that don't want to take the college approach, but they still want to train for the NBA. So we have like ex-NBA assistant coaches and trainers that have built this program to kind of incubate some of these high school players and prepare them over the next couple of years to enter the draft. So we sent over some music for them. They were doing like social media ad work. And I had some homies reach out that shot the video, and they were like, hey, we need a song. What works? And I just, happened to have a vault, and I sent them over a couple options, and they just picked what worked, and then they shot a video around it. So like that, those are some of the things that I've been trying to do as we're kind of in these like dead periods where I can't do shows.
That's dope.
So we already have questions coming in because I don't think we can speak enough on the concept and process of getting sync licensing. So for you, was this totally based on personal relationships, or did you actually research music supervisors for particular production companies or shows? How did you even know who to send that music to in order to get those sync licenses?
Absolutely. Originally, I had kind of, like a lot of people, stumbled into it. A long time ago, I released a song called Impossible, which is still my biggest streaming record to date. And it got picked up by some music supervisors in LA at the time, just independently contract work. They had offered me a sync fee to place it in a show. It didn't get placed, but they said that they would pitch it. They liked the song so much that they pitch it for other shows. Actually ended up hitting me up a couple months later, and had offered a slot for Cloak and Dagger right before it had opened up. So we ended up doing that. It got placed, which was awesome, about a year after they had reached out. So like you can kind of see how much time it can take sometimes for things to fall into place, but it was well worth the wait, and we kept the relationship. So they had reached out, we got a placement, and then once we got the one, we kind of started doing the research and on like how to leverage that placement into other relationships, right? So we started emailing out with just that record. Hey, we just recently got a placement on Cloak and Dagger. We started looking up sync licensing companies, and then from there, it was us taking the reins on figuring out how to immerse ourselves into that industry. So at first, I just stumbled into it, and then I've done a lot of work, over the last couple of years of trying to put other people onto that industry because I see the potential in how it helps independent artists, right? Figure out a way to sustain and to budget themselves and to fund themselves without having to, have 150,000 Instagram followers, right? It's a way for people to make real sustainable, livable salary as an independent artist, especially in the Midwest region. So I've done whatever I can to put people onto that. And then from there, it's been like leveraging those same relationships, reaching out to other sync companies. Now I have 5 under my belt now. So it's a little bit easier once you start building that resume on like reaching out to more companies and saying, hey, this is the work that I've done. Would you guys be interested in catalog? And then it's just being consistent. So yeah, I think there are sync companies out there too, guys, like Marmoset, that you can sign up for. You can actually add your catalog. It's a submission process. Some of these places are private, but they hold like a huge catalog bandwidth of just like extra records from production that they've signed or vocalists that they've signed. So I think anything like Marmoset or like Third Side Music or like using a Song Trader, things like that. If you guys check out Song Trader on Google, it's an independent site where you can actually upload your own music. You can distribute it right through Song Trader, and you can license it. So they'll put licensing opportunities up there. So maybe a good way for people who don't have those like professional relationships with private sync companies to start getting into the sync world and seeing kind of like how it moves and what happens and how music supervisors work. So.
And you kind of betrayed your own geography and said you were from the Midwest. I didn't ask either of you where you were from. So we know where Lucien's from. Jaelynn, where are you from?
I'm from California, like Central Valley, Bay Area.
Smooth.
Got it. Okay, so in general, before we get into very producer-specific questions, and we have producers who are already asking questions, and I plan on asking you throughout the conversation. What would you say is the biggest, just one of the biggest challenges that you face as completely unsigned artists on a day-to-day basis? I'll ask Jaelynn first and then Lucien second.
Probably for me, just reaching people, just getting people to, right now I know the music industry, especially on social media platforms, it's super saturated. So, you see all day long, there's people dropping links. I mean, I'm even guilty of it myself. Even some of my closest friends, will share their links, and it gets so overwhelming. You miss them. You don't have the time to click them or, whatever that might be. For me, that's my challenge, is just getting people to organically listen, you know. And I'll have people give feedback on music that don't even click links, you know, or just, you know,
Right.
want to talk to you rather than actually have listened to your music. So that's my hardest thing, literally just reaching people, gaining new followers, gaining new people. That's my struggle.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. That's definitely one of the struggles. I think is hard when you're trying to kind of bounce off of your following to get, you know, that algorithmic based like social media share outreach,
Right.
right? Right, you're trying to like catapult it off your cold following, so you want your
Crack the
core.
algorithmic code.
Yeah, right, like you want your
Yeah.
core to be sending these things out to their friends, because you just get the trickle down domino effect. So I
Right.
think that definitely, I agree with that, has definitely been a struggle as an unsigned artist, is reaching the masses, right? Because there's enough people out there for everybody to have fans,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like everybody can have fans. I think it's tough in figuring out how to reach the demographic that's specific to you. So I think part of
Yeah.
that isn't just figuring out like, okay, what content is true to myself and like what matches me, and then kind of try to take doesn't mean you have to be in a box, but maybe take what's working, you know, and mold around that first, and build a
Yeah.
following that allows you the place to kind of, you know, then work freely and be creative and adventurous and try new things. I think that, and like I mean, I know people that are in this chat can vouch for just finances, right? Like not having
Yeah.
access to
You, you're
yeah,
not
right, like
lying.
we're competing with A-level artists that have, whether they're getting paid off of it or not, they still have budgets, marketing budgets of, you know, into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's some of that's just for video work, right? And I
Right.
think right now what we're competing with as independent artists is the visual aspect, as things become more virtual and techy.
Yeah,
And so
that's
I
my
think
struggle.
like,
That's my other struggle
yeah,
right there is having
right,
more visual content out there. I don't have a lot of content.
exactly.
That was my second thing was that, yeah.
Exactly. I think we're competing with these artists that are putting on incredible visual albums, right? Like even just with Black is King or Travis Scott's Birds in the Trap, you know, and those
Mhm.
mini documentaries. It's very tough to compete with that level of work when you don't have a $500,000 budget. So I think for independent artists, it's figuring out like that's how to kind of take with your resources that you do have, and then figure out how to create very high quality work for a smaller budget. And that's
Right.
just in like talent finding, right? And then being a salesman and getting people to believe in your brand. Hey, I'm gonna pitch this to you where like, hey, I got $1,500, but I need like the video of a lifetime, right? Like it kind of comes down to you as an artist figuring out how to talk your butt off to get people interested in wanting to take a smaller fee to help something that they believe in. And that's where the art, right, comes into play, which is just like having stronger music and having a stronger brand only helps you in the long run. So make sure you guys are focusing on, you know, get in the studio, make sure your product is correct, right? Lab rat, put in your 10,000 hours and then bring it to people. And I guarantee you, people will pop out and be like, oh yeah, we'll help. Right, like
Yeah.
people will sacrifice time if they believe in it, and they'll sacrifice their fees and their labor if they believe in the product.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly uh, support that with experience. Recently, Crooked Eye, who's the rapper named by Eminem as the most underrated rapper of all time, recently posted about systemic misogyny in the music business.
Mm.
As a woman and an independent artist, Jaelynn, what are some unique challenges that you face while networking and marketing your music?
For me, personally, it's more, it's about like the content of a lot of female rappers' music doesn't match mine. So sometimes I feel like, you know, I'll hear what's mainstream or I'll hear what's popular and I'm worlds away from that. Like, kind of my music is more for people who haven't listened, it's kind of like storytelling. I'm really into poetry, spoken word. I kind of like to tell stories from my personal life with my music. But when I listen to mainstream or I see what other people listen to, it kind of is discouraging. To the sense where I feel like if I don't talk, you know, about sexual topics or I don't show more of myself physically or, you know, I don't do things of that sort, I don't get the same type of attention, you know, in my music that way. And so that's a struggle for me, just knowing, you know, putting music out there that's true to me that I know might not get as many plays because of the content.
Mm.
That's a struggle for me, honestly. But then in the reverse side of that, I'll also see, you know, male artists who will take a female's photo, you know, like a sexy picture and use that to advertise his using, you know, sexuality to push their music. So I guess there's its benefits and its risks, you know, I mean, its benefits and its downfalls of being a female in the industry. It's just, for me, that's it. It's content. I don't have a problem with music where, you know, they're talking about sexual topics. It's just not for me. And I feel
But
like if
he's
I
using
did
a
more of
picture
that,
of a sexualized female body to sell his
yeah, I've
music.
noted
He's
like
not
beats,
taking a
like,
picture like his pre-dick area or like abs or something to like look
yeah,
at
like
how
that's,
sexy this dude is.
Except for
Except
Lil
to,
Dicky.
right.
I mean,
So,
certainly there are. I think with you know R&B artists, you kind of it's tough to not be a super attractive male R&B artist and sell, but it happens, and
Very
certainly
tough.
you're speaking to something that's really ingrained in culture outside of music. So yeah, I mean
yeah,
that's certainly something that I don't face at all, and I don't
yeah. And I
know.
don't use that to my advantage. Like,
Yeah,
I don't, you know, I can put pictures of myself that are more provocative to advertise myself or to get more clicks. And I know that. I know that if I put, you know, a sexy photo or I put this or something that's clickbait, I'm gonna get more clicks that way. I don't do it on purpose. It's just not, you know, again, I'm not judging anybody who makes that type of content, anybody who does that as their marketing tactic. It's just for me, like I know I could, I choose not to. So
Right.
like when I do see a guy take like a girl's photo and advertise something that way, I'm like, well, I'm not mad at him for it. He's using what people want to see and as a marketing tactic, you know, and for me, it's just, it's not my route I want to go. So that's a struggle for me, just content. I don't want to talk about some of the topics that are popular. It's just not for me. I like to listen to it, but I'm not going to put it in my music. So I do honestly feel like I would possibly get more plays, more new listeners if that was the content. And that's discouraging for me, but to each their own. Everybody has a lane. There's different music we can stream. We all can listen to whatever we want. But for me personally, that's a struggle. I won't ever put that in my music. So for me, that's one big thing.
I feel like Lucien wants to say something as
I
a
was just
follow-up.
looking at him.
No, I agree with all of that. I think like I've seen all of the same things that Jaelynn is talking about. Like I've seen it. I've seen, you know, guys take, you know, half naked photos of women that they don't even know and just make
Right.
edits just to like push the content. I think, you know, that is maybe a little bit more knockable than like somebody that had like hired freelance a model to shoot a photo like, hey, we're trying to do this for the cover art, would you be
Right.
interested? And that she was down. I think I've seen people just taking photos off the internet or like grabbing women's account photos or profile photos and trying to push their music, and like that to me is just weird energy anyway. So
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
little different. Like I said, I'm not mad at anybody's tactics, and I know that it's unfortunate that that's just what the world is. That's what
for
people
sure,
gravitate towards. So they're just,
for sure.
you know, in my opinion, they're just kind of taking advantage of a situation and trying to market
Absolutely.
themselves. But yeah, it's a little weird to me too, to
Absolutely.
be
I
honest.
do want to say though, just for people listening, I think that there is an important thing in deciding like what healthy listeners look like for you, right? I think there's a place in which a lot of people can get a lot of listeners off of clickbait or off of like mainstream content. I think it's figuring out like you were saying, right? That you could get 100,000 listeners off of like some provocative content, but the fact of the matter is, if like those listeners don't match your brand, they're not going to stay around unless you
Right.
continue to put out provocative music. So for you, that's not really healthy, right? Because it's like you could get 1 million plays on the one song that's provocative that you drop, but now it's like if you're not dropping that content and those listeners start going away over
Yeah, they start to
time,
fall off.
yeah, right, then it's not really healthy. So it's figuring out how to build like a healthy fan base. It might take you longer, but I know you would rather 100,000 people listening to you that are like actually invested in quality content that matches what your message is, right, as an
Yeah,
artist.
absolutely.
So I think
Yeah.
that that's been just as important, figuring out, you know, how to look at plays, right? Getting plays is just as important as figuring out how to look at them and like what does that mean, right? Like we look at analytics a lot and just say, what does this mean for us, right? What do your top cities mean for you? What should you do with that information, right? If you have 60,000 monthly listeners, who are they? What does that mean? Are they the ones actually playing it? If you have 60,000 monthly listeners, but most of your music is being played off of other people's playlists, instead of your actual authentic Spotify page, then are you converting those 60,000 people into a cold following that will stick around, or will 1 month go by and then you'll be at 20,000 monthly listeners and you know
Right.
things like that. So I don't know. I just wanted to drop that in there too, just in thinking about that.
No, and
Yeah,
yeah, I
and
agree. Like that's a struggle for me too, is keeping my Spotify monthly listeners. It goes up, it goes down. So
Yeah,
that's what I've been doing a lot lately, is focusing on my analytics, trying to
yeah,
study
for
them,
real.
trying to, you know, use that to my advantage. So I agree with that.
Absolutely.
And for producers, this is not something that they should gloss over either. And when we had Andrew from TubeBuddy on, and he was talking about checking specifically your YouTube analytics and looking at not just how many likes you're getting, because that's kind of, it's not useless, but it's not that important. Looking at your engagement, looking at your click through rate. If the average is 2.5 to 10, I believe, and your click through rate is 1.5, that's a problem. If it's 7.5, hey, you're doing all right for yourself. If your
Right.
average watch time is 10 seconds on a 3-minute beat, that's a problem. What's
Right.
happening? What's wrong with if the watch time is low, that means there's probably something wrong with your beat. It's either not
Right.
what people were searching for, or it's just not necessarily that good. If your click-through rate is low, maybe there's a problem with your title, maybe there's a problem with your thumbnail.
Right.
So everything that we're talking about applies to singers, songwriters, producers, anyone with a brand. So I want to ask a really probably difficult question, but I think the two of you will have a great answer, and this is something for producers to really pay attention to. To you, what makes a quote good unquote beat?
Oof.
Who you going with first? You go.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez. What makes a good beat? Okay, for me, same thing as we're talking about in terms of like clicking through things, right? Like when I'm in the studio now, as opposed to maybe a few years ago. A few years ago, it's like anything that I got sent, I was like, I'm gonna listen to every single beat because I was trying to formulate what my sound palette was, right? Like what I liked, what was digestible for me, and what worked. As a more experienced vocalist, now it comes down to listening to beats based on what I'm looking for the project that I'm creating. So if I'm creating an album or a single that has a specific vibe, then I'm going to ask producers to send me things within that vibe. So what's been really beneficial for me now is reference beats. The first thing or reference tracks, right? I'll send out a reference and say, hey, this is the sound I'm going for. Send things back. Immediately off top, if your music doesn't match that vibe, I'm clicking through it, right? Just because, not because it's like I don't care about your beat, but because when I'm in the studio listening through beats, I'm looking for exactly what I need for what I'm going to cut over that day. So if it's not, it doesn't match the vibe, clicking through it. If it's not mixed correctly, right? Like it's very quiet, I have to blast my speakers past like the radio level of dBs, right? Like it's plunky and it's not concise and clean. I'm gonna move through it. I'm gonna click through it. So things like mixing, matching sound, matching vibe. And then I think after that, it's just like messy beats too, right? Like if it seems like you haven't taken the time to pay attention to detail, then I'm gonna click through it as well. But like other than that, I think those are the main things for me, right? It's just got to sound good, right? Because at the end of the day, like I could be feeling something that I wasn't feeling 2 weeks ago, but as long as it's mixed well, it's mastered well, it's clean and it's not messy, then I think that it always has a shot with anybody. But I for sure think the most important thing, producers, is when you guys are sending stuff, like make sure it's matching the vibe of person that you're sending it to, right? Like if it's okay to try to pull people into something that's challenging for them, but for most vocalists, like if you're in the pop world, like don't send them trap beats, right? Like don't send a pop artist trap beats. I think if you're trying to get placements, is like the healthiest thing to do is make sure that you match what you're sending with the person you're sending it to.
Right. Yeah, and for me, I think it's again, it's changed for me also from when I first started. A lot of the things for me is when a beat drops. When I'm looking for beats, I really take that into
Fair.
consideration. For instance, like if I'm playing a beat and I'm 45 seconds in and the beat has not dropped yet, I'm clicking through it. I'm not going to use that.
Exactly.
Also, the
Exactly.
length of a beat, if it's a 1 minute and 50-second long beat, and again the beat didn't even drop till 1 minute, you're only giving me 50 seconds to
Right.
be able to flow on it. So for me, it's for producers just being mindful of, even if you like the beat, which of course you should love your own work, but is the rapper able to, or singer, whatever might have you, able to put their verse on the song? Some of them, they don't drop fast enough, or they transition too fast, or they'll put a sound effect in and adds like in a
Right.
weird spot, And when you're flowing, that'll mess you up. And those are little small details that will literally I'll just click through the song. Like, okay, 45 seconds in, hasn't dropped, next. I'll see it be only 1 minute and 50 seconds long. Sometimes I won't even listen to that beat if I know my song goes 3 minutes. And I've also had an argument before on Twitter with somebody telling me, well, that's lazy. You know, you can go ahead and take the beat and extend it, or you can do this, and the other thing. Well, for me, I know that I have that option, but I don't specialize in making beats. I'm not great at it. I admit that. So I won't buy a beat and then go and alter it. Me personally, I know people do. I'm not great at it. I don't have the skill set right now to be able to do that. So I was told, well, that's lazy. You should be able to take the beat and make it whatever you want. Well, that's why I'm purchasing it.
Wait, who told you that? Did a producer tell you that?
Right.
Well, remember, okay, it was this thing on Twitter. There was this big debate, and I was talking about beats, and I had all these people coming at me, like, producer-wise. Well, that's lazy. Then, you know, beats aren't just, you know, wrapped up for you. Take the stems, do this, and move it around and make it what you want. And I thought,
That's projection. That's projection.
Yeah, it's like if I was gonna do that, then I would know how to make beats and make them on my own. I appreciate the beat for what it is when I find it, because that's the producer's art. You know, so for me, when I can find a beat, it's done, it's ready to go. That's what I personally am looking for. So
like structure and pocket for you is like the most important.
Right. And it's an emotion. It's an emotion for me. Like DJ Payne, personally, that's why I really, really am drawn to your beats. The first time I heard one of your beats was on Rap Chat, and I mean, I loved it. 2 seconds in, I felt emotion from it, you know, and that's always what I'm looking for. So for me, it's an emotion. It's when it drops. It's being able to put it on and feel like, ooh, you know, you feel something from it. Like, oh, that's, you know, that's what I get from your beats, and I really appreciate them for that. So just, you know, small things, and there'll be beats that are almost perfect, and it drives me nuts because I'm like, damn, why didn't you drop that here? Or it's not structured quite right. I can't put my verse on it, or I can't, you know, and that's the most disappointing for me. Like, man, you're almost there. And how do you tell a producer that? Like, for me, they'll say, well, hit them up and have them work with you or structure it. But I feel like, man, I don't want to offend you. You know, I don't want to tell you, hey, change this, change that, because then to me, it's not your beat at the end if I do that to you, you know. That's just me, how I feel. But it's small things like that when the beat drops. Also, producer tags. I had another person tell me that I have no right to say that, but you're entitled to a producer tag. That's putting your name on it. But some of them will put it multiple times throughout a song and in a spot where it's louder and going over the verse I'm trying to put down. So that's another thing. Multiple times of tagging your song in it or tagging in a beat. That's my only other thing. So those are my 3 main things: when it drops, the timing of a beat, emotion, and a super I don't know how to put it, like overwhelming tag that you can't work around.
Okay, so I find this whole conversation hilarious in kind of a tragically humorous way, because it seems to me, and I think both of you agree, and I've seen it myself. I watched the Twitter conversations, and
aren't they great?
It's a dark hole.
Oh, it's a dark hole. It's a dark hole with hands coming out and trying to pull you in. So it's one of those things where I'm seeing producers frustrated that they're not selling beats to rappers, but or recording artists, but some producers will respond really reactively to feedback. So as you were saying, Jaelynn, when you commented about so for example, the length, that's the easiest thing to address, I think. For me, what I learned was, rather than putting a 2-minute beat on my BeatStars page, I'm just gonna make that 4.5, because look, if the rapper, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you're recording a song but you want 3 verses and not 2, it's way harder for you to turn a short beat into a long beat than a long beat into a short beat. You just fade it out, you cut it off. So that's advice that I give to producers all the time. Just make it long. If it's too long, they cut it off. You know what I mean? But you got criticism for saying that from the producer community because they have this artistic vision for the track. Fine, have your artistic vision. But when you're trying to sell those beats to people, when people are giving you their hard-earned money and they too have an artistic vision, at some point you're going to have to compromise. And it's not, this is me going on my producer rant. It's not you selling yourself short artistically. It's that you have to understand that you are 2 artists and you're working together. And in fact, they're paying you.
Yeah.
So what's the issue with compromising? I know DJ A said something to that effect where he missed a lot of opportunities. He was in a pop session and they asked him to transpose a beat and he refused to, and he lost that opportunity. So
Right.
there's no shame in meeting somebody halfway and having a
Right.
conversation where you communicate and make adjustments. That
Right.
shouldn't
Yeah.
be that shouldn't be something that either of you get backlash for from the producer community.
Yeah, no. And I think there's
Yeah, they
definitely
get really
two.
offended sometimes. And I also, another
Yeah,
thing
they
I
do.
noticed is that they fight amongst themselves about things that as a rapper we don't even care about or think about. Like if you use loops, you're whack. And if you do this, you're this. And it's like, I'm gonna tell you right now, as a
Pain's like,
rapper,
oh my
I have
God.
never once listened to a beat and been like, I will never buy that because it has a loop on it. I don't know the difference. I don't care. If the beat is good, use 85. I mean, I don't,
Yeah,
we don't
right.
care. I promise you, producers, we don't care about loops or type beats. Name them. Type beats to me help a lot because if I'm
Producers are
looking,
like, if you don't use gross beat, you're failing.
yeah, or like if you use type beats, you're so unoriginal. Then well, no, the type of the beat is describing to us as the consumer, as the rapper looking for it. It's describing for me like an emotion or a vibe. So if I'm looking for a Mac Miller vibe, something kind of mellow, or
Right.
it's just to describe the beat. It doesn't make the producer uncreative by saying type beat. It just helps me out. So
Mm-hmm.
stop fighting amongst each other. It's okay. Type beats are okay. Loops are okay to us. I mean, it's more your guys's. I watch them fight amongst each other, and I just sit there like, I've never honestly thought about that. I've never listened to a beat and worried about a loop or if you said it was a tight beat that type this. That's those are things that they fight. You guys fight amongst each other that we don't care about. So
Yeah, you just want a good beat.
exactly. I don't care what kind of loops in there as long as it's good. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. I have nothing to add. So let's get into the type beat thing because some people were asking that. Let me ask Lucien and then Jaelynn. Well, I think Jaelynn already answered the question. Lucien, do you search? Okay, when you're looking for a beat online, and I know you've gotten beats online and you formed relationships with producers that you've worked with online.
Absolutely.
How do you search for beats? What do you do? Do you type in
Okay.
a mood? Do you type in a tempo? What do you do?
Yeah. For sure. I think. Oh my God, it's been a minute since I've looked up like a type beat. Okay, so a long time ago, I started obviously on YouTube, right? And I think the first thing that I did was I just thought of all of the artists I can think of in my head that match my sound. Doesn't mean that you're like copying them, but like they've influenced you, right? I think music is a world of innovation. So I've tried to find like, okay, who matches my vibe and my sound and my energy, and then I've started there. So then I've looked up like if I'm in an R&B mode, like one of my biggest influences is Party Next Door. So I'll look up, okay, Party Next Door type beats, right? And then I'll kind of dive into that. What I learned after a while was for me, it was always, and I'm sure Payne will get into this later, so I'll just touch on it. But I think for me, it was always about having the things that nobody else had, because if I make a song, I don't want everybody to have the same song as me. So for me, it was always kind of like starting when I first got my bearings, it was figuring out, okay, those free type beats. How can I find something that I can just rap over so that I can get myself into kind of just a creative habit, so I can figure out what I like and what beats I like, what sounds I like, and I can kind of formulate a vibe or whatever I'm trying to, a sound that I appreciate for myself. Then it went from there to, okay, I need more of the exclusive side of things. So what I would do is I'd find a beat that I liked, and then I would actually just go to that producer's page instead of just grabbing that first beat off YouTube and just taking that one. I'd go to the page of that producer, because if you've seen like 3-4 beats from the same producer that you like and you vibe with, maybe you should just figure out how to connect with that producer, right? Because clearly they're creating a sound that matches what you're looking for. So I've gone to that page. Then I dive into the rabbit hole of that producer, maybe go to their website, get off of YouTube, and then start figuring, okay, what are their leasing options? Then what I would do is I would lease all the beats that I liked, right? Or grab the free ones that I liked, I record over it, and then I would send that demo to the producer. Hey, I want this record. What do I have to do for it? right? And then it creates some sort of rapport with those producers. So that's kind of how I started when I was searching for beats, back when I was searching for beats then. Um, and then those sites too, right? Like you go back and forth. Sometimes you find sites that are maybe hosted by like 3, 4 producers. Those are the best sites to find when you have like one of the people that I love to this day. We're not close friends, but we have like a virtual relationship, is Dylan Graham, right? A lot of people out there know who Dylan Graham is. Make real, listen real.
Shout out to
And
Dylan Graham. I
shout out
met
to
him at
Dylan
the very
Graham.
first BeatStars summit.
Exactly.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
very
he's a big
talented.
BeatStars user.
Very talented. And back when I had found Dylan Graham in like 2015, right, is when him and Benjamin and a couple other guys just had this site where you could go on and they all had their leased beats on it. And they were all quoted at similar pricing structures. So it was very easy for me to not only get like variety, but also kind of know what to budget for. So I would go back to that site after a while, and I just started grabbing as many beats from there as I could because it matched my vibe and I trusted them, and it created some sort of a personal relationship. And then funny enough, Impossible was actually a Benjamin beat and got placed, and that created even more of a relationship. Once then I created a song that actually was beneficial for both parties. Then I started getting beats, sent a little bit more and things like that. So I think like just to start off, I think it was find the vibe that matches you, find it, right, search for it, and then kind of find those sites that work for you. I found like a third party site in like 2016 that I've used religiously. It's called Jija. They had really affordable leases. They're like $875, and I used to go back to that site all the time. Nobody knew about the site, so I would just go there and find beats that like nobody else had, and then I'd buy the exclusive or the lease or whatever. So I think match your vibe, and if you really like the producer, maybe just go reach out to the producer or cut a couple records to the free beats, and then send a producer, hey, this is the vibe that I'm in. Could you make more of this if I paid you for custom stuff? Things like that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jaelynn, what makes you start working with a producer consistently? What's that
Basically,
process like?
just looking like he said for me, I started out finding beats on Rap Chat. That's where I first started. And it was, I would notice like I liked a certain, I would be looking through and I wouldn't even see the name. I would just hear it and be like, I'm like you. I know that's DJ Payne. And I started to get really familiar with your beats. So then, I know you're a producer. I'm going to go back and check for. And then like another one is Classy Beats. He has like a certain style like you where you hear the beat and I know it's his beat. He doesn't even have to have his tag. By the way, his tag is awesome. That's one tag that I really like. But it's basically just, and then I found this guy on BeatStars actually, and I used to be hesitant to shout him out because I didn't want people to go, I was hoarding him. I was like hoarding my producer. I'm like, no, I don't want you guys to
I've
find
been
these
there
beats,
too.
but he deserves it. And his name is That Kid Goron. And I found him literally by searching Mac Miller. Like I said, I wanted like a Mac Miller type vibe. And so I typed in Mac Miller beats and he popped up. And I got stuck on him. I heard one beat and it was amazing. So I just started going through his category and I ended up that day buying several beats from him. And I just kind of stacked them. And I go back weekly to see it. I check on that guy weekly to see what beats he's put out. So for me, like I said, it's just a vibe. I search type beats or, certain vibes of beats, things like that. And then I'll get stuck on a producer and just continue to come back looking. So right now it's mainly you, Classy Beats and That Kid Goron, but that's how I do it. I found him through a type beat.
Yeah,
So don't be scared to use type beats. Don't let other producers tell you type beats are like a bad thing because that's what a lot of rappers use to find things. So
Classy's out here showing you all the love.
oh, is he? I can't see it.
Yeah, he's in here on the comments. He said much love to Jaelynn.
Oh, how do I see the comments? Am I able to?
Yeah, all you have to do is click on. There's a little tab that says comments on the right hand
Bro,
side.
there's a bug in here, and I'm trying to kill it.
I'm so
I
bad.
figured that. I wasn't judging you.
I can't find it. I'll wait.
I thought you had virtual reality going.
Yeah. I was just kind of like, I think a bug in here is tweaking me out.
Where it says chat.
Yeah. Go to comment. So you see there's like two sections. Private chat. Click comments.
Hey guys, sorry. Wow, I'm sorry guys. I am just.
No, that's fine. It's really distracting to try to pay attention to the comment. That's why I'm kind of trying to moderate and insert those comments into the conversation a little more naturally. So let's transition over to the business. Obviously, you've done business with producers. You've built relationships with producers. I think a source of anxiety for everybody involved is having that conversation about splits. Not so much for some of us. I don't feel that way, but others do. What has been your experience with splits? I mean, in your opinion, what does a fair split
Ooh.
look like between the composer of a beat and the writer and performer of a lyric? And have you ever had any kind of disputes or any situations that you've kind of had to you've learned a hard lesson from?
I've had a situation I learned a hard lesson from, but it's a little bit different from that situation. I actually found beats because sometimes producers is another thing I've learned to look out for, is that a producer that I had found had posted some beats. And this is when I was just starting out. This is actually the first song I ever released. I was just starting out and I really loved the beat. And it wasn't through BeatStars or anything like that. We just were exchanging emails. So I bought a lease from this guy. I put the song out, and then I heard from a larger artist about a week later that artist put the song out with the same beat, and they actually owned the exclusive to it from what I was told. And when I looked at the credits, it wasn't the same producer. So I panicked. I was crying and everything. I'm like, oh my God, I put something out and I didn't have permission. You know, I have this lease, but it was this generic lease. At the time, I didn't even know what beat leases should look like. So it was, you know, real generic, real, looking back now, really stupid of me. But I paid the guy, got this little generic lease, released the song, and it was not this guy's beat to ever give me the rights to. So that was a lesson I learned. I then had to go back to my distributor, remove the song, and it was a really personal song to me. And I actually reached out to the producer to like apologize, figure out, make sure, because I also know, you know, producers work with each other. So maybe he did have the rights to the beat. But so I was super confused. I actually reached out to the producers listed on the larger artists' credits, and they never, you know, responded or reached back out to me. And yeah, so it was just a really confusing situation. I didn't know if I had the rights to use it. I didn't know if it was a legitimate lease. So I ended up removing the song. But that's a hard lesson learned, is just really, you know, finding somebody reputable, making sure that the leases are legit. And that's what BeatStars has actually offered me. I know I've never purchased anything on BeatStars where the lease isn't legit. But as far as splits for me, I've never gone over like the lease numbers. I've never had big enough numbers where I've ever had to really consider the splits yet. So I would think 50-50 though, if you ask me. It's half your work, it's half my work. So that's my feeling on it. It's 50-50.
Absolutely. I've had kind of a similar issue, just in the sense of like when I first got started, not really understanding what the tiers of like leasing to exclusive looks like. And again, right, like every producer, that's the thing that gets tricky, is every single producer has different terms per their structure. Right. So some people lease for free at a different pricing, and then some people have even done like a weird in between where there's not just leasing to exclusive, it's like lease, then like a top tier lease where you get a wave instead of an MP3, right, for a little bit more expensive, and then like you can get the stem track out and the exclusive. What I've found interesting, to be completely honest with you, is making sure that people understand that exclusive or exclusivity has nothing to do with splits. In the sense of like exclusivity, what that actually means, right, is that this producer's beat is now off the market for anybody else, right? There still hasn't been a split agreement, and there still hasn't been anything that people have agreed to. Splits pertain to the writing, right? And I think that's a little bit harder for producers in 2020 to wrap their heads around, and vocalists too, because we don't understand publishing from the core base that it was, which was like writing, right? Sheet music, lyrics on paper, right? And that's what that really meant, and that's what those splits really were about. So I think as things have become more virtual, that has changed in how we look at it. So people have been able to, you know, lead people astray, or vocalists like us who have been like confused and just figuring out how the lease that I bought, how that is coupled with or pertains to any type of splits, right? And I think that the first thing to do is to understand that they are separate, and then to understand them both as, you know, in depth as you can in their separate worlds. And I think so leasing, right, is you have rights to use the beat. That's what that means, right? Leasing to exclusive means that you have rights as just somebody else who has the beat, and then like everybody else who has ever leased the beat has rights to use it. Exclusivity is like the artist who bought the exclusive tag, right, is the only artist that has the right to use this beat. Okay. And then splits on the other side is more so pertaining to who wrote and put hands on the master version of what this song is now that you've put writing on top of writing. And I think that a couple of the things that I've run into are in first just people not knowing what splits are, right? Like I've had a lot of producers that have just no idea what splits means or what that looks like or what it's supposed to entail. But vocalists as well. And I think those are important things when you're like in the independent world to make sure that you know these things, because they will be more beneficial on the side of collecting mechanicals, royalties, and they'll be more beneficial on the side of collecting like licensing fees for music, right? Because it lets you know who gets paid for what based on who wrote. And I think that some of the things that I've run into is in thinking that buying the lease or buying a more expensive lease or a premium lease or an exclusive has given me like complete ownership over the beat, and then I don't owe any producers anything, and that's not correct, right? Even when you buy the exclusive beat, it doesn't mean that now it's your beat and the producer has no ownership over it, right? They still own their version of the writing, like their portion of the writing. So the sheet music, right, the kicks, the snares, the instruments that they use, they still own that part and have rights to it if say your song was to end up in a TV show, right? The producer then can claim those rights based on the split. So buying exclusives doesn't mean like I own the song now and it's mine and I can cut out the producer. It means that you're the only artist that should have access to that beat now, and that beat should no longer be sold online. Essentially, the point of doing exclusives, guys, and producers for like maybe I'm sure Payne can like jump on this too, but pricing, right? I think what I read about a couple years ago was producers base their exclusive prices based on how many volumes of records they sell on the leasing side. So if I have one beat online and I know I can sell 100 copies of that beat as a lease for $50 a piece, right? So I can make $5,000 off of that beat, then I will charge my exclusive price as $5,000 for me to take that offline, right? If you're a producer that sells a high volume of beats on BeatStars online, you kind of price your exclusives based on like your average of what you would be making if you were to leave that beat online. So then you can kind of like, sometimes you'll get weird things where it's like, hey, the lease is $50, but the exclusive is $3K. And producers or vocalists are kind of like, why is that? Like, why is it so expensive? What's the disparity and what's the difference? That's kind of around how or what, at least what made sense to me, that I had listened to like one producer talk about, this is why I charge so much for exclusives based on leases. And then I think again, just doing those splits, it's tough when you have people that don't really understand the importance of splits or don't really care
Or fake
about
it till they make it.
right,
Pretend like you
right,
know because they're too
or
embarrassed to ask.
yeah, or like to be honest with you, I had a situation in which like I had reached out to the producer for one of my biggest songs. At the time, it wasn't my biggest song, right? And he was kind of giving me like, I was getting responses like every 6 months through email, right? Like I had managers reaching out to him like, hey, bro, like we're trying to use this beat. It's already out. Like we've bought this, we bought these licenses for it. We're just trying to make sure that we get the splits done. So if anything happens, you don't come calling acting as if like we have never created a rapport with you. Funny enough, right? That song is the one that ended up getting placed for the first time. And I still had no response from this producer. So, just to put that in producers' heads, right? If you don't respond to these vocalists, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, that song has done 1 million streams and has a TV placement, you're missing out on a huge chunk of licensing composition money, right? Simply because people didn't want to respond or didn't want to do split sheets because they didn't think it was valuable. And I think that's the value in it, is you never know who has bought your beat and who could, have a viral track out, right? You never know. So I think it's imperative that you guys claim your rights, right? Claim your splits, claim your composition, right? You wrote that. So I think that's been something that's been a struggle, and then having that person reach out 2-3 years later and claiming, hey, I want a piece of the pie, when we have tried to reach out to you for a year, 2 years and trying to get you your own rights, so I think that's been kind of a struggle on that regards too, or in that regards too. So I just think make sure people understand what splits are, make sure you understand what splits are, because that's just your rights, right? It's just you claiming your own music. So yeah, I mean, I know that was a lot in a mouthful, but
No, you're
Let
right.
me open another can of worms then here, Jaelynn. Let me direct this question to you. If there were one thing that one piece of advice that you could give beat makers on how to work and build relationships with more recording artists, what would that advice be?
Don't spam your links. don't don't and like I was talking about earlier, it's so oversaturated, on social media with people who make music. Unfortunately, not everybody who makes music makes it at a great level. So, with it being so saturated, we get links thrown at us all the time. Like me, I have different platforms. I have Rap Chat, I have Instagram now, I have Twitter. So, when multiple people are sending me links on every platform, there's just no possible way I'm going to click them all. And just that's my thing. Like a lot of people spam them. You'll be talking about something completely separate on social media, and here comes a link. Like, I'm talking about my dog had passed away, and then somebody spams me a link. It's like I will never, ever, ever click that link. That's super duper unprofessional. Even at the beginning of me starting out with music, I knew that that's just in bad taste. So that's my number one thing. Don't spam links. Don't follow somebody and 2 seconds later DM them, hey fam, let's work. I don't know you like that yet. We haven't built a relationship. That's just like, again, that's unprofessional to me. It's a bad look. So to me, it would be don't spam people your links. Maybe just communicate with them a little bit, interact a
For
little
real.
bit on something separate than a music post, or just get to know them
For real.
before you do that. That's my number one thing. I've had people who will follow me and 2 seconds later they drop their link.
Yeah.
Hey, check me out, fam. Hey, let's work, fam. Well, I don't even know your music, and I guarantee you probably don't know mine because you just followed me and it's let's work. Well, if you don't know the quality of my music and you're willing to work with me, then that says something about you to
Right.
me. At least check people's music out first. Don't just spam your links to every single person that makes music, because there's no integrity in that. Find somebody that you like as a producer. You like their sound. Same way we come find you guys. Like I was talking about, I have 3 producers I really, really like. Do the same with an artist. Find somebody, learn their sound, and then, after a little bit of time, maybe, approach them. Just don't spam people. That's my number one thing. It's a bad
Right.
look. It never works. Maybe 2% of the
Absolutely.
time will somebody click that link. It's you're just wasting your time,
Yeah, I always
in
say
my
like
opinion.
I always say if you wouldn't do it in person, don't do it on virtual, right?
Right.
I think
Right.
like nobody. I mean, maybe some of you, right? There's some people out there, but like if you
Yeah,
wouldn't run up,
like a
if you
2%
would,
maybe. Well, I'll
yeah,
say
right. Like
2%.
if you didn't see Jaelynn on the street and you wouldn't run up to her like crossing the street and go, "Hey, here's a link to my beats. Listen to my beats," right?
Yeah.
Then like maybe don't do it on virtual either, because I think like virtual DMing is just it's just a virtual space to like have a conversation and create dialogue. So I think
Right.
like people have gotten confused, obviously, because like technology has separated, almost dissociated like humanity from themselves, right? Like people
Right.
feel like maybe I can act differently on Instagram than I can in person. And I think
Right.
no, it's just Instagram has just created a virtual platform in which we can communicate without being next to each other. And so I think like again, if you don't approach those messages with the same respect that you would approach Jaelynn or myself or Payne in person, right? Then don't do it. Right. I think I've had to learn that, not the hard way, but I've had to learn that too, just in trial and error, and just figuring out, hey, like, let me talk to this person how I would talk to a normal person. If you actually, like you were saying, if you actually genuinely like somebody's music, maybe hit them up and say, hey, I really actually like appreciate your music. Here are the songs that like I mess with. And then maybe if it's like, hey, I've created some beats that were inspired by the songs that I heard from your catalog, and I figured, hey, maybe you would want to jump on these. Let me just give you the option, right? I think sales
Yeah.
technique 101 is always making the potential client feel like they have the control, right? You want to make Jaelynn or myself feel like we have the option to check out these beats, right? It's not like ram them down my throat and put them in my face and shove them in my face. It's like, hey, Lucien, I made some beats that are in your vibe. I think you'd like. Feel free to check them out. Let me know if you have any feedback. If you don't check them out, you don't. But if you do, I'd love to work, right? Like even just that subtle shift
Yeah.
will make me look at that DM a little bit differently than I would have if it was just like, hey, Lucien, I like your music. Here's a beat. Let's collab, right? Like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
and you know what? Piggybacking off that, I don't think people realize how rare like integrity is, or just how rare manners are.
Yeah,
Like
intent
you
for real.
actually stand out to
Yep.
me. I mean, at least when you approach me like professionally, or just not being, hey fam, let's work, or hey bro, let's
Exactly.
to me, that stands out. It's so I'll get maybe 25 of those, or just spam a link like "let's work," or no introduction. I don't know you from Adam. I don't know you at all, and
Right.
you're just dropping this in my inbox. So, like you were saying, something so subtle like that, it makes a huge difference. Like, hey, I
It
just
really
wanted
does.
to send you this. I felt it had your vibe on it. If you use it, awesome. If you don't, you don't. That's always Those are the best ones to get. The other
For
thing
real.
off that is something that could turn that negative is then when they'll DM me like a couple hours later. Well, did you listen? Well, what'd you think?
Yeah.
Well, give me some of the times I'll be like, I actually did listen. I was feeling it, but say like I was busy, I was going to come back to it, maybe
Right.
hit you up
Right.
later and talk about it. If you hit me up first, like, well, what'd you think? Like poking at me, I
Yeah.
instantly forget about it. And
Exactly.
that sucks. But again, it goes back to integrity, and it goes back to like, it's so rare dealing with people who are just genuine and genuinely like your music. They don't want anything from you. It's just, here, I'm going to drop this. If you
Exactly.
use it, awesome. If you don't, you don't.
And we
Don't
know
poke
y'all are
back at that
hungry.
person.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
We know people are hungry. Like we get it. You know what I mean? Like we're
Right,
starving
right,
artists too. Like we know everybody's hungry,
right.
is itching to like collab and wants to put their work out there. Right? Can't knock anybody for that. But I definitely think, right, yeah, if you're the person who's doing any of that, or if you're the person who like literally only DMs your link, just a link, you just drop a link, right?
Yeah.
Definitely
It could
should
be
do some
spam.
work.
It could be like if
Yeah, right.
I ain't
Like
clicking that.
let's
Yeah.
definitely just do some work. I think on just creating personal rapport. Like that's the most important thing in sales.
Mhm.
Anybody that's ever been in the sales world or in the sales market, um, you understand these concepts. If you haven't, I would do some due diligence in just reading some books or reading or watching videos or reading up a little bit on just like sales, right? Because I think in this game, this entire industry is built around sales. This is sales, right? Jaelynn is a walking LLC, right? That's her business, right? So she has to take care of that business, but she also has to sell it. And I think for anybody that wants to be proactive and productive and efficient in the back end of this industry, you need to learn sales, because those tactics only translate in the music world, right? You want to sell beats, create a product, and then create a good pitch, right? If you create a good pitch, it's more than likely people will bite.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I want to make sure that we end on time and respect your time. But here's the unfortunate thing. I have a lot more questions left. There are a lot more questions left in the chat. And I've also gotten a couple comments saying that they would like a part 2. So I'm putting both of you on the spot and asking you, would you like to come back sometime in the future to continue this conversation?
Absolutely.
Yes, I would love to.
Okay, that is a verbal commitment. Everybody saw it. Okay, we got a bunch of people. Yeah, they're celebrating in the chat. Part 2. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we'll bring them back for part 2. Once again, Jaelynn, Lucien Parker, we really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you for.
Hey, shout out to
asking
BeatStars and shout out to Pain One for real.
I'm gonna be contacting both of you and seeing when a good time for both of you to come back is, because I think this is a conversation that absolutely doesn't happen enough, and it creates a lot of really unnecessary friction and anxiety between recording artists and producers, and there absolutely should not be any there.
Right.
We're here to support each other's careers.
Right.
We need each other's careers to work for the most part, and we need to win together, and we need to communicate, and that's really the only way. So once again, thank you both. Shout out to everyone in the chat. I don't think I've ever ended a session with this many people engaged, so
that's awesome.
I'm sorry I couldn't see the comments, you guys. I can go back and read them later, right?
well, good. See, and you committed to part 2, so you're gonna be
Yes.
more involved in the chat next time.
Right.
And Jaelynn,
It's
we'll
all about
connect-
evolution.
We'll connect on socials too, Jaelynn.
Yes. Yeah, I
Shuffle.
followed you. You gotta follow me back.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you. Damn, I'm guilty.
You are.
All right, sounds good, everyone. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate
We'll be
you having me
back.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. Dame will be back on Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be back on Thursday, same time, same place, right here on BeatStars Live. BeatStars.world is the place to check out everything from their new features to the racial justice initiatives. BeatStars.world. Catch you all later on the next session. Peace.